Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of As I Live and Grieve. So happy that you joined us again today, and I appreciate you so much. I hope you're doing well this week, or at least maybe better than last week. Little steps, that's about all we can ask for, and I hope you're taking care of yourselves. Y'all promised me, remember? With me today is Bradley Vinson. I'm so tickled to have met him and had our paths crossed, and we're going to talk about a very special topic near and dear to me because I'm a grandmother, and you all hear me talk about my wonderful, wonderful grandsons that I'm so blessed to have in my life. So, hi, Bradley. Thanks so much for taking time to join me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm uber excited and
uber
just
excited. I like
over
that
the moon.
phrase.
I'm ready to
I'll have to add that to
be
my
here with you. So
repertoire.
yeah.
Before we get started, could you just maybe give a little bit of your background to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of call myself a husband to my better two-thirds. That's my wife. She's better than my better half. And I'm a grandpa, and I'm also a fire and police chaplain and speaker, teacher. But I'm also a grieving grandpa, and I call myself Alana's pawpaw. I use that as part of my title now. I'm Alana's pawpaw. So
How old was Alana when you lost her? Okay.
she was 4.
Dear.
We
Oh,
lost her in an
that's
accident at her
heartbreaking.
school.
Today, and the reason I've asked you is because of you being Alana's pawpaw. We're going to talk today about grandparent grief. We've not talked on it yet. My podcast is now 3 years old, and I've done episodes every week, and we've still not devoted an episode to grandparents. So I'm really, really pleased that our paths crossed and that you're able to join me.
Yeah, much appreciate that. Like I said, and it oddly, when you say that, it seems like that would maybe be the case because grandparents are kind
Absolutely.
of on the
Absolutely.
periphery of grief, I feel. So 3 years without talking about it kind of
Yeah.
seems,
Now,
that'd probably be it.
I have fortunately not lost any grandchildren, but having said that, I did lose an infant myself who was full term, difficult delivery, and he only lived for just under 24 hours. So I grieve his loss. At the same time, when my daughter Stephanie, who is truly a best friend, when she was going to the hospital to deliver her first child, we knew it was a boy. We had already named him Nathan. And I worked at the hospital, so I was well aware of the little shortcut code, those tricky little things that they page for a certain doctor or something over the paging system that really doesn't exist. But what it means is that there's trauma, there's something important, something critical. They do it secretly so as to not upset visitors. But I knew the code, and it was for the delivery room, so I knew
Right.
that there was a problem in there. And I went through, I think, every single aspect of grief, every emotion and everything. I feared for my daughter. I feared for my unborn grandchild, and remembered at the same time the difficulty I had, and certainly did not want her to endure that. So I've touched on the borders, if you will. And Nathan today is an adorable, almost 20-year-old man in a band, living his great life as a performer on stage. And I'm right there as a groupie every performance to watch him.
That's awesome.
So, as a grandparent, grief is more complex. What would be some of the reasons that you can think of that makes grieving as a grandparent a little bit tougher?
I think because I'm grieving my granddaughter and I'm grieving my daughter, who was her mother. And it's that dual role of grieving and grieving for another adult because they've been changed in a way. but then trying to parent them through it. And we all know how hard it is to parent an adult already, right? And what I guess through the generations as it kind of occurs is that there's very few grandparents that say, oh, I'm grandparent so-and-so. Everybody's a pop, or, I'm a paw, my wife's name is BB. And it's that generation of grandparents that want to be involved with their grandkids because they're maybe younger and more chipper than, usual. And some grandparents even move into the area where their kids are to be close to grandkids, right? And now there's a void. And it's hard to grieve because we're on the periphery, right? And what's so hard about it at a level is that whenever there's child loss, I believe I've experienced, the further you are from being the birth mother, the less care you receive, intentional or non-intentional. So when there's a child loss, mom gets more care and hugs, and everybody gathers around mom, even more than dad, right? And even more than the other children, the siblings of the child that was lost. But once you get past that initial family unit, grandparents might as well be a third or fourth cousin in the whole scheme of things. And it's not a jealousy thing. It's more so, we're involved grandparents. We lost too. And it was so difficult because at the time, both of my parents were still alive. And so as a grandparent, I had parents, and dealing with my parents maybe not being able to live beyond the deep grief.
I don't either.
I don't think any of us live beyond grieving.
Right.
But I mean the deep, heart-wrenching, yes, and grieving that my mom and dad might not ever really have joy in their life before they went on to be with the Lord. And so it's all those things.
With everything you said,
and so
it adds some layers on there. And as you were speaking about it, the thought came to me that sometimes, depending on situations and your family and your network and everything, it can almost be a disenfranchised grief because you're not getting that support. In fact, some people may not even think to mention it.
No, because in most cases, as a parent, you lean on your mom and dad or grandparent figures or older adults for that knowledge, for that care. So when tragedy happens, that's who you lean on. And so now when you're that, patriarch or whatever else, who are you leaning on? And so there's a void there because everybody tends to lean up, but you don't want to lean down. Suffering. You don't want to lean into your children. Yeah. Right. And just the things that we learned as a grandparent, well, even this, because Alana, granddaughter, we had a daughter, and Alana was her daughter. And my wife walked up to me one day. She said, I just realized I'm grieving the loss of motherhood because now motherhood is broken. I birthed our daughter birthed our only granddaughter, and now she's gone.
Right.
So I've lost the legacy of motherhood, and I would never even fathom that. And when you look at it, I guess physically or DNA wise, I didn't even think about this until after my granddaughter died. Literally, my wife is my granddaughter's mother because every woman is born with all the eggs and stuff she's going to have, right? So my wife lost a daughter / granddaughter. And I was like, and just all those things. And, sitting as a grandparent, even to the level of what does everybody consider a grandchild, right? The gift that you're giving your parents. They get to spoil somebody. And, I'm using air quotes here that nobody can see, and do it right this time, right? Because it's like, oh, my mom and dad did all this and they were too busy when I was a kid, but now I have a kid, and it's like a reward for my parents, right? But now the gift that you gave us is gone. And how do we console our children through that? Even though it's not like they took the gift from us, a lot of times they're like, the gift I gave my parents is gone, right? And so you have all these things you're dealing with, where you're trying to care for a grieving adult, another level of your family that's grieving because she had a brother, two brothers. She was the middle one. When she passed, the little brother was 2, she was 4, older brother 6. And so you grieve all these things because, the person you're supposed to be with for the majority of your life
Very true.
is your siblings.
Very true.
Not your parents, not your grandparents. And now the person you're supposed to spend most of your life with is gone when you're 6 years old. So the auntie to all your kids, the girl that gives the side eye to all your girlfriends, that person's gone. And I grieve that for my grandson because at some point, all things being equal, he's going to be grieving me at some point. And the person because they were just so tight, the person that I know, maybe outside of his wife, if he's at that age when I'm gone, I just know he would be leaning on Alana. And he doesn't have that. So it's all those things you're grieving as a grandparent because the golden years, you're winding down. I mean, it's inevitable. None of us live forever. And it's like...
And that's kind of what I'm saying to myself as you're talking. You're saying so much with these words. And I think of the relationship I have with my brother, you're absolutely right. My brother and I are closer now, I think, than we've ever been. From the time we were young and used to tease each other and, make trouble for each other. But, we are very, very close now. And if a week goes by that one of us doesn't reach out to the other, it's very odd and usually means somebody's sick. Wow, is what I'm feeling. And you have kind of put into words some things that I didn't even know I had thought about, that just kind of fleeting thoughts here and there, but you've really honed in on them. So for grandparents again, we're just using that general term, grandparents, but there's a grandmother and a grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
How is it different? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably speak more from a grandfather's perspective.
And like I was saying before, when my wife would tell me that, the legacy of motherhood was broken and those type of things, I never would have fathomed that. Mm-hmm. I just saw it as us not having a granddaughter. And it may have been different had it been, God forbid, one of my grandsons. You don't never want to say what, but it's that kind of thing. But then also, here's what's weird. At the time, I was working for a global nonprofit, global ministry, to be exact, because I guess that adds relevance to what I'm about to say. And I get back to the office after bereavement leave, and my friend / boss / manager, because we were just cool like that, he looks at me and says, not exactly these words, but I don't know any relationships that have survived child loss. And I'm standing there in that man's presence, and he was like, I don't know any relationship that has survived child loss. And it was like he was questioning my manhood, questioning my faith, questioning the love I have for my wife, everything. Because to put that in context, literally right now, we are the guardians of Alana's brothers.
Okay.
We've been raising them for the last 7 years. She passed away in 2016. And so we've been raising them basically since that point. And for someone to tell me that the bond of our marriage wasn't strong enough to get through this within days of it happening, it kind of set a precedent, right? It's like, so now every heartache, every moment of silence, every bit of angst I may be feeling for being a new parent, I was like, oh, okay, we're going down that road, or we won't be together. And as grandparents, I kind of lean back on that. I think the harshness or the heaviness of it, frankly, also deals with time. Because we don't have a lot of time to reconcile. We don't have a lot of time to not get something right. We don't have a lot of time to miss an opportunity. We just don't have the time that a 20-something, all things being equal, because things, we don't have that kind of time. And so when someone says, I don't know any marriages that last, relationships that have lasted through this, it's like, so I'm going to spend my retirement years alone and grieving that and my granddaughter, and so it's all these things that go along with it that happens to parents, birth parents, but those things are compounded, not worse, because I would never say it was worse, but there's other things stacked on it, including time, that makes it so difficult. Because early on in my grief, when sad seemed 100 miles away from where I was, and your body starts to fail based on age and grief, and you wonder, because frankly, I had to have surgery. I'm sure it was probably grief related. I don't remember if I started having these issues before my granddaughter died or not, but I wound up having to have surgery. And I'm sitting there in recovery, and they sent me home, and I got stuff attached to me and all that. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, what if I die in this state, in this pain, and I'm going to live out the rest of my time in heavy grief and heavy physical pain.
Oh, dear.
And my grandsons have to witness this. So it's all these things, and men usually ideate, about death more than women during grief. And so all that stuff, right? And what really helped me through a lot of it, especially raising these grandboys in the midst of it, is that my wife approached me one day and she said, I know you love Alana and I know you're grieving, but it hinders me being able to heal, not knowing if you're trying not to heal.
Not knowing if you're trying not to heal. Okay.
Right. So not knowing if I'm not trying to heal.
You were just kind of giving up.
And the idea of grieving in silence and cocooning and man caving and all this other kind of stuff, right? And she said, if I can't be a witness to your healing process, it hinders my ability to heal. Because I gotta be able to witness you doing it. And that did something to me. Now, everybody doesn't have a wife like that, right? And everybody doesn't have a wife that'll speak that life into them. I'm so grateful for that. And so even I had to break a lot of the norms. I had to emote more than anger, because typically men emote everything through anger. I'm sad, I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy, I'm grumpy. I'm frustrated, I'm grumpy.
Right.
And I have 2 little boys to raise. And so they walk up and they say, Papa, are you thinking about Alana? And whether I was or not, I would say, yes, I am thinking about her. Because I knew there was opportunity. Because they were feeling something and wanted to talk about it. And I would say, Papa is sad right now. I've been thinking about Alana and I'm sad. And it's okay to cry and it's okay to emote. And because now I'm raising 2 boys that need to see the full spectrum of what it takes to be a man, right? I can't go back on the old tropes of stiff upper lip and be strong. No, because I can't put that burden on a 2 and a 6-year-old that does not have a sister, that every dinner table they sit down at, there's an empty chair for the rest of their lives. Every event they go to and we go cruising as a family, she's not there. And it's evident she's not there. She's never been forgotten and things like. So it's all of those things, right, that now I have as being the man in the family, because I'm grandpa, got to handle all of that stuff, and outside of my granddaughter not being here, I'm okay with all that responsibility, right? Because I've had to lean into it.
Well, of course.
Rather than I would rather not have all that responsibility.
Okay.
Thankful I can take on that responsibility. But like I tell everybody else when I go do speaking engagements and all this other kind of stuff, all that's cool, but I'd rather have my granddaughter.
Now, before your wife said that to you and kind of gave you that wake-up call, if you will, were you aware of yourself feeling anything like giving up? Were you aware of not taking care of yourself?
That's a hard one to say. I feel an introvert, which my wife doesn't really believe that either. But I get energized talking to people. But as soon as I'm done, we don't have to go out to dinner afterwards and all that kind of stuff. It's like, And so I'm okay being alone. I'm okay sitting quietly, and it doesn't mean anything, right? And so it's easy for that quietness to then become a shelter, then become I'll just sit here a couple more hours, right? To then become, okay, well, I'm not feeling well, so I'm not going to go jogging today. But then because I'm not jogging, I'm not feeling well. Then it becomes a spiral, right? And so it was that kind of thing. So it snuck up on me because, you kind of use grief as an excuse for a while until your body just says something's not right. And then you got the old, stubbornness of men that, oh, yeah, I got that little pain in my knee, got that little pain in my back.
Have to be fair.
And, usually it's my wife saying, okay, you going to keep limping or you going to go to the doctor, right? And I would always, and I always suggest that men, grandpas or not, go have the man checkup within 6 months of a grief event. Because I really feel that men physically hold on to their grief more than women.
I want to make sure I understand. Grief in men probably manifests itself in more of a physical state with men, and with women is probably more emotional, I would say. Yeah. That's an interesting, that almost sounds grant-worthy. Yep. You could probably get some grant money to research that concept, but it makes sense. It certainly makes sense. And I hadn't, until you just kind of mentioned all that, I hadn't really thought that one of the ways that men grieve, this is my opinion, versus women, is that you see it in a man in more of a physical sense. Some will take to drinking or just maybe going out and gambling or whatever, but they will need something. They will try to fill that gap, if you will, with something physical, an activity or something like that. That's extremely interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I have this thing that I call men grieve too, and usually a lot of women show up to it. But I talk about how, first of all, men ideate about death more than women, I feel. But then we'll I call it self-medication. Yeah. The drugs, the alcohol, that kind of stuff. But then we'll also do things that get us close to death, but won't kill us. Okay. Like, I'm going to go out and run with the bulls. I'm going to skydive. Right. And it's like, it's those kind of things where, but if I happen to die, it's okay. You see what I mean? So it's that kind of stuff. And I would tell men all the time, you can't build enough birdhouses. You can't fix enough cars. Right. You can't watch enough football not to grieve. And all these things are ways to not grieve.
It's almost equivalent of stuffing it. You're distracting yourself from it.
Right. And that's what makes the physical ailments. Because frankly, when I was talking about both of my parents being alive when Alana passed away, my father passed away December 2022. So it's been less than a year. And I'm kind of like the family minister, kind of become that now because I went to seminary and all that. And I'm also a chaplain. So I wound up doing my dad's funeral. And,
Right.
so that was in January because he died late December. Around mid to late February, I was up in my office where I'm sitting right now, and I reached for something and it threw me on the floor. Just that much pain. That evolved into full body pain, not being able to move, which evolved into bedridden for a few months, which evolved to all this other stuff and physical therapy and all those things. I thought because I had experienced grief already and that I could handle my dad, not having my dad with me. And I really feel that even though I thought I was trying to lean in and do it better, that grief caused probably 85 to 90% of that. And it was all physical. It was all, I didn't know why it was. I thought I was talking, speaking into it, leaning into it, outwardly emoting, having conversations. And just the grief was just that much more powerful than everything that I was doing that I thought meant I was leaning into the process. And it literally it threw me in bed for months, not sleeping, couldn't eat, couldn't stand up, couldn't sit too long.
Yeah.
It was literally the physical manifestation
of grief. I'm an advocate and a believer that every loss you experience is going to be different. I've had 4 major losses in my life, and from my infant son to my father, my mother, and more recently my husband, who's been gone now 5.5 years. But each one was different. And even though you'd think, by now I should have it figured out, I didn't. And the loss of my husband was the worst one of all and the hardest. And I also am a believer that I'm going to grieve for the rest of my life. My grief has changed. It's changed shape. My life has changed. I'm a different person than I was. They kind of have morphed me into a new being, if you will, in a lot of ways. So I agree with that, and I can understand that. But that will help me understand men grieving, knowing that it's more physical for them. So that hopefully will help me support and be a little more understanding.
And I say in a general sense, because I used to do this straw poll when I go to speaking engagements about men and women's grief. And I would say, all things being equal, if you saw a man and a woman broke down on the side of the road, which one would you help first? And to a person, everybody said the woman. I said, okay, all things being equal, now men and women separately, you broke down on the side of the road, what's the first thing you do?
No, that's
almost okay. I'm not being chauvinist, but almost to a person, almost every woman said, I'm going to grab my phone, call somebody. Almost every man said, I'm going to get out and walk around the car and see what's wrong. Maybe I can fix it. I said, that's male and female grief in a nutshell. Everybody leans into the woman. It's communal. It's how can I help you? Men, you're going to be all right. Be strong. But then men also will say, hey, I got this. Let me try to figure it out. Where a woman would say, yes, please, I welcome this. And women are what I call knee to knee. They'll sit around in a circle and be knee to knee. Men are shoulder to shoulder. Give us something to do. And at some point, we're going to talk about our grief.
Wow.
But women can just go straight into it. Men got to be golfing or whatever else, fixing a roof. Oh man, I heard about your granddaughter. Yeah, man. Yeah. And then it kind of comes out. Yeah. Yeah. So that's grief, I feel.
I love that.
In a male female nutshell.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jot that one down. That's beautiful, actually. And I hate to say this, but our time is running out. So, I may very well have to have you back another time. Who knows? But I always love to have guests back.
Would love to.
The discussion just keeps going. I've got one gentleman, Gary Rowe, who's an author. Wonderful, wonderful Christian man. And he just does so much for me personally every time I see him and talk to him. He's been back a number of times. But at any rate, before I sign off, before I say goodbye to our listeners, I want to turn the mic over to you and let you speak directly to our listeners without me asking questions, and let them know on a little more personal level who you are, how you might be able to help them, etc. So the mic's yours.
Well, thank you. I just like to say that I'm Bradley, grieving grandpa, Alana's pawpaw, and I just want to be able to help people on their journey that need someone to walk with them a little bit. And if I can be that person, that makes me feel good and gives what I'm going through purpose. Because some folks that were on this journey a few steps ahead of me reached back and helped me. So I feel I'm obligated that since I'm on this journey and I might be 2 or 3 steps in front of somebody else to help them along. And I just kind of help people, with their grief in different ways. I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, I'm a fire and police chaplain, and that's, just want to help people the best way that I can. There's nothing that, I have a website. If you just go to bradleyvinson.com, it's my name.com, and there's a grief assessment there just to kind of maybe see where you stand with your grief, and some resources there to check out. But I just always want to be available to people, because the journey is theirs individually. But if they're willing to let someone walk with them for a little while, I would love to be that person.
Said. And I'm convinced, and one of the reasons Stephanie and I started this podcast is we just want to open the communication channels, because most times just being able to talk about it, whether it's your personal grief or just general questions about what is grief, or I have a friend who's suffering, how can I help? Just making conversation easier, and sometimes that's really all it takes, and you have no idea how in a few words you can help someone along. So reach forward, grab our hands, and we'll reach back and grab yours when you stretch it out. Until next week, I'm going to remind you again, take care of yourselves. I can't stress that enough. If you do nothing else, if you can't get off the couch, if you can't do anything else, for heaven's sake, remember to eat, remember to hydrate, get up and take a shower. You'll feel better. You'll feel accomplished. So please come back. I love it when everybody comes back. Take care of yourself. Stay well on your journey as we all continue to live in grief.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveinGrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.